you can dig into these details that were never available before. It's, you know, things that I wondered about when I was a kid. It's like, wow, like I didn't realize this information was out there.
Pile of sticky goo that once you put your hand in, you're never getting it off.
No matter how you package it, the internet has allowed us as a people to do some great things. But with every new technology, a fear looms for some people that their way of life will change. This is as inevitable as it was with electricity, cars, now the internet. Every site I go to online offers me the ability to like something or to see what my friends think about it. This has created a form of communication unheard of in the past. A two-way interaction with millions, if not billions, of potential followers. All this communication has created a new currency of the internet. Not money, but data.
So I guess my main sites, I'm a big Redditor, so I go to reddit.com. I use The Verge for a lot of my tech news.
Or new information on things that I need to know for whatever class it is that I need the information for, or reading tech news, or lately I've been spending more and more time on GitHub.
Just doing my work, sometimes I have to go online and look up tutorials or video references. And then I also do a lot of, spend a lot of my free time online socializing and reading news stories and looking at funny content.
Yeah, I do a lot of research, just things, topics of interest. Yeah, reading technical articles, you know, just, yeah, the security articles are pretty interesting for me, at least just because of the technical details of how somebody is able to break into things.
Online, any number of security-based websites, reading up on current threats, current trends. Also, there's the social side of using different technologies to communicate with family across the globe. I'm a multinational family, so we're all over the place. I'm also a musician, so I'm constantly looking at new means to play my instrument, learning new music, downloading sheet music, etc. So,
how often would you say you're online?
Oh, Jesus.
Like a given day, let's say.
I'm online for probably 13 hours a day.
I'd say probably, I don't know, 6 to 8, maybe 10 hours a day.
How often are you online?
I'd say a pretty fair amount of my time.
Like 100% of the time.
Boy, that would be probably an embarrassing answer.
Have you ever considered getting offline, like just stopping everything altogether?
It's too big a part of my life. I could never get offline.
I mean, yes, I've considered getting offline, yes, in a sort of a hypothetical sort of manner. Really, there's no way for me to particularly do that.
Yeah, it's a definite time saver.
well, who uses road maps anymore? I mean, seriously, who goes out and buys the road atlas and uses that when traveling? I mean, my family went on a vacation and we were driving down and we were coming to an area near one of our favorite fast food restaurants, and my wife was trying to Google and we had no access. And she's like, "This thing's useless to me." And we are pretty dependent on it. We don't realize just how dependent we are. And if suddenly it went dark, how many people would have an absolute freak out because they couldn't Google how to get 2 blocks down the street?
How many of us are like that, needing the internet for everything we do? The greatest thing people need is connection, and the internet's provided that. But the question is, when does sharing ourselves with the online world become too much?
We post data about ourselves and other people on the internet, and other people post data about themselves and other people on the internet. So really what you end up getting is this connected web of data that kind of overlaps. The problem and the beauty of that, it's kind of a double-edged sword, is that this allows content providers, Facebook or news sites or Google advertising, to target our personal interests. The problem with that is if a legitimate site knows all of this about you, how hard is it for some nefarious being or entity? How hard is it for them to get it? Or rather, the real question is, how easy is it for them to get?
Is my internet persona more dangerous to me than my real life persona? And if that's the case, then the answer is yes. Because to steal my credit card in person, you have to have means to my wallet, which is most times going to be on my person, and you have to, in some way, assault my person. If you want to steal my information online, I won't notice my wallet's missing because it's still on my person. I won't know that you've necessarily spent the money that you stole from my account when I thought I was buying a book at Amazon.
Yeah, you know, you could probably talk to somebody else who is also equally digitally savvy, and you would have a much different conversation about privacy. But I also think I'm kind of influenced by some of the tech entrepreneurs that I've met, and some venture capitalists who are really good at looking at what's coming next. And you know, Brad Feld, who's a local venture capitalist, pretty well known, he's been saying for years, you know, privacy is essentially dead, so just don't forget about it.
When the internet first kind of started hitting its first wave, you know, in the 90s, it was really sticky because people could have this second self, or even a seventh self, you know, like depending on how deep you're into it. And even though that side of the internet somewhat still exists, right? Like you can be in an alternate reality environment, something like Second Life, which was really popular a couple of years ago, still exists, but in a much smaller way than they suspected. You can have that other persona, but really the internet is becoming now almost more of an accurate representation of you and your decisions built up over time than maybe you could tell just by seeing someone walking down the street, you know, definitely.
There's really, in my mind, there's no distinction between a digital self and an in-person self. And if you mess up online, that can have serious repercussions, just like it can in real life.
A lot of the time, we find identities getting stolen by just silly things we post about ourselves on Facebook. Or, I mean, I know of just using not even a identity theft aspect of people posting on Twitter, out at this place, I'll be coming home at this time, which gives anybody that's following you the ability to know that you won't be at home for a 2-hour window or so. And home invasions and things like that have picked up from people posting that sort of information on their website. So it doesn't just live in the stealing my identity zone, it also lives in the stealing my actual physical stuff.
I think what's more of interest for consumers is the everyday stuff that can attack your computer. Because if you are like pretty much everybody else that uses the internet regularly, you would tend to visit online banking sites, credit cards, basically you name it. You can get your credit score online, places ask for your social security number, and trust me, these are things that any criminal, let alone cyber criminals, are literally salivating over. They want to have.
You know, everybody gets these phishing emails, and you know, click on this link, or you see it on Facebook. Somebody's written something horrible about you. You know, you should see it. You know, every time that happens here on the CU campus, where there's some phishing email that gets blasted out to, you know, everybody who's got a colorado.edu address, probably most of us are savvy enough to know not to click on that stuff, but there's always people who do.
We have all of the network side threats, where these networks of computers that are trying to control and steal your information. They are a valid threat. However, they are nowhere near as much a problem as the person sitting in front of the computer driving the keyboard.
As far as the ease to get credit card information, and one day receiving a complaint from a victim who happened to be a deputy sheriff in Michigan, and his credit card had been misused for the purchase of Dell computers. And as I was working on that, and again, he knew they were being shipped to an address in Boulder. So as that case was being investigated, numerous complaints started coming in. We probably had half a dozen complaints from victims across the country whose credit cards were being misused and the items being shipped to the same address in Boulder. That home, the receiving home, was staked out for a fairly long length of time. And every day UPS would come to deliver a dolly full of laptop computers. Well, one day, again, UPS showed up. The individual didn't answer his door, but a vehicle drove in to this cul-de-sac, contacted the UPS driver, and a dozen laptops were put into the trunk of the car. So those individuals were contacted. They came to the police department for an interview, and one of them told me that their organization could hack into any financial institution and change addresses of account holders. So they didn't mess with the account holder's name or credit card number. All they would do is go in and change a block of addresses to the reshipper's address.
We talk a lot about our carbon footprint. We need to think about our internet footprint, because it's a real thing. It's a real problem for people that want to protect their privacy. Like Tyler says, anything you put out there is traceable, trackable, and can come back to hurt you later.
So the question is, with all this fear they have about online threats, what would they recommend for everyday folks to have a safe interaction with the net?
See, there are a lot of things out there. We preach, we evangelize strong passwords, passphrases, et cetera, and so the attackers have come to the point of like, well, it's really not that good going after a passphrase. That could be any number of characters that I'm going to spend all this time trying to find. Why not just get the person to give it to me? Mm-hmm. And that's the way it's just so much easier to have you just give me your password. But no one's going to come up to you and go, hey, what's your password? Come on, I'm a trustworthy guy. I'll do great things with it. I'll look after you. I'll make sure everything's. They're not going to do that. They're going to send you an email. They're going to trick you on a website. They're going to do something. They're going to find some nefarious way of tricking you into giving that information. So always, whenever prompted for your information, verify where you're at. If you're at firstbank.com, make sure that it's firstbank.com. Make sure that it's https://firstbank.com.
There are some social media sites, LinkedIn is one of them, that have a status bar that says your profile is 70%. Give us this piece of data. Give us that piece of data. You'll be further along. It's enticing. They want you to do this, but always keep in mind that they are for-profit companies, and there's a reason that they're doing that.
I think it's probably more important that if you're the one who's doing the contacting, you know, if you're online and you're the one that's pulling up Wells Fargo or Chase or whoever, that you most likely know, you know, you've pulled it up, it's legitimate. It's the ones that you get that you have to be careful of.
By just posting more information than necessarily needs to be out there, we seem to have lost the concept of TMI. We put TMI in an entirely separate category now, but really in a digital age, TMI is anything anybody doesn't need to know, doesn't need to be out there.
The world is full of obstacles, people who want to take advantage of you. The important thing is not to get disheartened. None of these people would ever say, don't use the internet. It is truly a powerful tool which has changed the world and made it better.
I've never considered not using the internet. It's one of those things where you wonder, you know, yeah, technology and things, and yeah, when I first started here, that was unheard of, and not such a thing. We didn't have cell phones, you know, and then you get a cell phone and you wonder, you know, wow, how'd we get by without this? And now I feel that way with the internet too. You know, sure, it's made things easier for scammers, but it's made easier in investigations, and I've never considered not using it.
But they do all preach safety, so perhaps consider before you put up that next post. Thanks for watching.